intro?
Yeah, we ready? Let's go. Let's rock. Okay. Welcome everybody. As you see from my title block, my name is John. I am the PMSIG speaker chairman. This is still an experiment, we think, me and Shelly. It started kind of as a joke when I did the QA SIG, which is the sister meetup org that CoreDev sponsors, which for many years while I worked at CoreDev, I was the speaker chairman. And I left to take a job at eBay, and 10 years later, I came back and did a QA SIG talk about being a PM. And one of the audience members joked that, John, you should do a PM SIG. And because my talk was all about like life on the other side of QA and what's it like to be a PM. And Shelly and I talked about that, and Shelly thought it would be a good idea. So we tried in October to do the first one, and it went really well. So every other month, every even month, we do this. I find a speaker, either a program, project, or product manager, so any one of the 3 Ps, and they talk about what they do, and we have Q&A at the end. And this week, I am pleased to introduce Lester Dorman, who I've known at eBay almost since I started in 2011. Lester is a PM at eBay like me. He's a 25-year Silicon Valley veteran, and he's currently in eBay's selling experience engineering. And it spans areas like chief of staff for the VP of engineering. He's a TPM, a technical program manager of the core selling experience platform, a PM for the multi-user account access, MUAA, which is a relatively new feature in selling accounts, and a lot of experience as you can see in 10 years of eBay, of course. But when I asked him what talk he wanted to do, it was a vintage Lester. Very straightforward, no nonsense. What does a PM do anyway? And I was like, that should have been like our first PM SIG in October. So in this talk, Lester's going to give some insight about how he combined various tools, skills, mindsets of the 3 Ps, product, program, and project, to be effective in his job. Like being the glue that connects all different product contributors to each other, communication across teams and functions and domains, and defining strategy and those kind of things. So anyway, I'll let him speak for himself. I'm excited to introduce him. So ladies and gentlemen, I present Lester Dorman. Take it away, Lester.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. I haven't really done any presentations in a long time, I guess, other than just work meetings and things like that. So it's kind of nice to take some time out to reflect. It's always a good opportunity when somebody asks you to give a presentation on something. It kind of forces you to think back on what you've been doing with yourself for the last few years, and maybe even, God forbid, think about what you might want to do for the next couple of years. So that's kind of what this exercise has meant to me. So I'm happy to share the thoughts that have been going through my head around this topic lately. So happy just to jump in and share it with you. So with that, let me just share my presentation screen with you and go into present mode. Okay, so everybody can see that. Good. Yep. Okay, so yeah, as John was saying, what I was thinking was I'm one of those jack of all trades kind of people. At certain times I've gotten kind of down deep in certain technical areas, but if I look back over my career, it's always been fairly well balanced between program management, a little bit of product management, quite a bit of project management, and some chief of staffing. So I figured, well, how do all of those fit together? When you're in a kind of like a senior manager role in a company, as an individual contributor, what are the things that have kind of gotten you there, right? Well, what are the things that set you apart maybe from somebody else, and how do you view what it is that you do, right? And what your role and responsibilities are. So why isn't this? There we go. So just my background. I was born and raised in Ireland. I was there until I finished school, high school, and had worked in my mother's retail clothing business for quite a number of years through my teenage years. And those of you old enough to remember what the 80s, early 80s were like, worldwide, economies were pretty bad. So there wasn't a whole lot of prospects. I was playing in a rock and roll band as a drummer at the same time, and the band broke up in the early 80s, and everybody in Ireland was leaving to go to New York or Boston or somewhere like that. So I kind of thought, well, I might as well just check it out. So I came over here, and worked in various service industry jobs, bars, restaurants, hotels, moved out to California, moved up to Tahoe in 1980, I want to say 1987, 86, 87 season, and stayed there for 7 years, and met my wife up there. I moved down to the Bay Area and entered community college after I got my green card in 1992. So I was here for quite a long time before I got my green card. It was quite a long, protracted process. And as soon as I got my green card, I entered community college, and thought I was going to do something in sports related, because I had been a ski instructor up at Squaw Valley here, and really liked it, and thought that would be, an interesting career to pursue. I knew once I got my green card that I wanted to pursue a career rather than just working in the service industries for the rest of my life. But as soon as I enrolled in community college, I started getting interested in computers, because that's what was happening then in 1992, 93. Very first class I took was called Introduction to Keyboarding 101, which was learning how to type. So before I ever even touched a computer, the first thing I did was learn how to type. So that's something I don't regret, is being able to finger type, touch type with both hands and use all my fingers and all that kind of stuff. So that was good. But I started drifting into computer science classes fairly quickly. I was taking the math stuff, and then was talking to some of the professors in College of San Mateo here. And they said, why don't you take some programming? That seems to be the way to go. That's what's up and coming. And I did. And I ended up transferring to university after 2 years. And I studied a thing called symbolic systems, which is an interdisciplinary degree, combination of a lot of humanities and computer science. So a lot of linguistics, psychology, philosophy. And on the computer science side, artificial intelligence, natural language processing, linguistics, and the core CS classes. I became interested in the human-computer interaction part of it and user-centric design. So that's what my concentration was as an undergrad, and I did a master's in it. And got hired out of college into, a little fun fact, I took the very, very first ever course offered in the United States in a university in internet technologies in 1994. It was given by a guy named Nick Parlanti. And it was really, I think the whole purpose of the class, we learned a lot of the internet technologies, but our final project was to create a web browser. What did you call them at the time? A widget? I don't know what they were called, but it was an application in a web browser, like written in Java and all that, and it was kind of cool. I was hired into Sun Microsystems, which was one of the big success stories in that part of the mid 90s. The Sun was pretty much taking over the computing industry from IBM and HP on the wave of the internet. And I was hired into the sales organization, and I started work as a systems engineer, which is in sales, but doing basically setting up so enterprise shrink-wrapped software proof of concepts for companies for the sales organization. And it was mostly security related stuff, identity management, user login software, firewall protection software. And then in 1999, Netscape and AOL and Sun formed this thing called iPlanet, which is when Netscape was breaking up. It was acquired by AOL, but AOL didn't want the software part of it. They just wanted the users part of it, and they did a deal with Sun. And Sun expanded its enterprise software portfolio at that time to include web servers, application servers, portal servers. So at that point, I became a product manager for the iPlanet web server and portal server, which were the Netscape products. And did that for a couple of years. Moved on to market development engineering, which was basically kind of like a software, web-based software integration role, where I was working with third parties to try to get them onto the Sun platform, the Sun Java Stack platform, to provide solutions to companies, kind of like market development engineering kind of thing. I became the technical account manager for Siebel at the time at Sun Microsystems. I was their, software technical in sales kind of person. And that kind of was going great for, a number of years. And I rode Sun all the way up, and then I rode it all the way down. And in 2008, right before Sun got acquired by Oracle, was the last round of layoffs. All of the software folks were pretty much let go. And you guys remember, pretty tough time to be unemployed around the world. So in between 2008 and 2010, I kind of put bread on the table by working in various contract positions. I did some user documentation for a company On24 in the Bay Area, if you know them. I got a job for a boutique consulting company called Primitive Logic in San Francisco, and worked on a couple of projects for them. And then in 2010, when things were starting to pick up a little bit, I was all this time looking for my new career step, right? Trying to get back into a career path. And I'd been looking for a job for 2 years, and I finally, on Craigslist over Thanksgiving weekend, saw an advertisement for a program manager position at eBay on Craigslist. And I applied for it on like a Friday night. And on Monday morning, I got a phone call. On Tuesday, I was in the office interviewing, and by the following Friday, I was hired. Apparently, just as luck would have it, the person who was in the position I was hired into was going out on maternity leave, and they needed to fill the position immediately. So they were kind of desperate to hire somebody. And I've been there ever since. And it's been great. So a little typo here, not 2021, but that should be 2012. I started off working in that position, right? It was the eBay Web Services software stack, which is kind of like around boomerang, because that's full circle, because that's kind of where I'm back in right now, kind of thing. And I did that for a couple of years, and then I moved into DevOps. And in DevOps, I got a lot of experience in kind of, data center build outs, basic systems infrastructure maintenance. I did some deep diving into Hadoop as a service, became the program manager at eBay for Hadoop as a service within eBay. Then a new project started up, and I was the program manager for kind of like eBay's beginnings of moving into a microservices architecture. So we started a new group called Commerce OS, and I was the program manager for that. We developed the eBay public APIs and also the internal APIs for our kind of back-end web services consumed by our front-end applications, and did that for a number of years. And until I moved over to seller experience engineering on the product side. And that was my first kind of movement into the eBay user facing stuff. And I had known the VP of engineering for several years, because I'd been at eBay for quite a while, 8 years. And he just said, hey, I just want you to come in and fix all the stuff that's not working, in my organization, pretty much. And, you figure out what needs to be done, and I'll back you up. And it was kind of like, oh my God, this is great. I had 14 managers in the 8 years I had been at eBay up until that point. And I had never had anybody say, you go figure out what needs to be done for my organization, and I'll give you full support. And it was great. So there was that trust there right from the beginning. And it's been absolutely fantastic. The best manager relationship that I've ever had in my career. Okay, so just moving on to the program and product management stuff, and this is just kind of a funny disclaimer. These are my own opinions, nobody else's. And if you want to adopt them, then that's fine with me too. So at this point, I'm just going to try to move this. I don't know if I can hide the thing, because it's hiding my slides a bit, the gallery view. So there we go. It's just on my laptop. So project versus product versus program. And I've thrown in portfolio management here because I think it kind of, people don't really talk about it much, but it's part of the picture. And how do I view them? I've done pretty much all of them. Sometimes several of them at the same time over the last 25 years. And I've always done one or the other. I've always been at some point, even when I was working in the sales organization, I was kind of a program manager at the same time. I put it in two buckets here. I don't know if you agree with this. Again, my opinion. I think product and project management are vertically focused jobs, I think. And when I say vertically focused, what I'm saying is, I think if you're in one of those roles, your focus needs to be vertical, right? It needs to be focused inwards, right? And looking at on the product side, the why and the what. Why are we building this? Why am I being asked to build this thing? And why do I need to build it in a certain way? And who am I building it for, right? And it's a very kind of enclosed. I need to build the best XYZ thing that I can, based on what I can find out about the market segment and the resources available to me, right? This is my job as a product manager, and I'm very focused on that, kind of up and down, all of the dependencies, up and down. As a project manager, then, given that we have a product, right? When are we expected to deliver what, and how are we going to do it? So that's kind of the typical triple constraints, right? You've got, what is it you need to build? How many resources do you have to build it, and when do you need to deliver it by, right? And that's also very vertically focused within a product group, right? You kind of need to look inwards and see what those three things are and manage that space, right? That's how I view product and project management. So when I kind of put those hats on, that's my mindset. That's what I'm thinking about. On the other hand, program management and its parent, portfolio management, I see as much more horizontally focused endeavors. You're working across teams, you're working across functions, you're connecting different types of things together. You're the glue that delivers a business objective, right? So to me, the difference between the vertical and the horizontal is, vertical is building stuff, right? You're producing artifacts, whereas portfolio and programs is all about business results, right? You are tasked with accomplishing some objective, right? And you will use whatever you need to do. You will bring to bear all of the things that you can to accomplish that objective. So on the portfolio side, typically managed by executives in the company, what are the strategic business objectives we're going to pursue this year, right? And then let's put a portfolio of initiatives together, or whatever your company calls them, but we call them initiatives. Actually, at eBay, the latest flavor of the month is customer problem statements, right? We need to identify certain customer problem statements and then go tackle them. And then you have a program management office, maybe if it's org-wide, or even within product groups, you have program managers, whether if they're functionally situated or whether they're centrally organized, doesn't really matter. Program manager's job is still the same. I need to deliver the business objectives by managing all the dependencies between the different teams and functions, and all of the potentially conflicting goals across the organization to deliver that business objective, right? So that's how I view those, right? That's how I look at the various different PM or PGM or PJM or portfolio management designations. So moving on to how to be effective, the skills and best practices. And I'm talking about program management here mostly, but it does apply to kind of any kind of role within the product and program space. I think what's been most useful for me, what has really helped me the most over my career, is that I feel like I've been able to build trust among the people who I interact with, and the people that I work for, and the people who I ask to do things for me. I think that's critical. If you don't have trust among all of your stakeholders and stuff, it's very difficult to get anything done. You're really fighting against the wind. It's like pulling teeth. It can be very difficult. What does that mean? Building trust, you need to set and manage expectations with people. You need to be accountable to them, and you need to demand that they be accountable to you, right? If you're the program manager and you own the business objective, you kind of need to set the ground rules, right? But you also have to establish trust among those people, because they're not going to want to do anything for you if you don't have that, right? And so you need to work on building that up, and it takes it can take time, right? It's not something you're going to get out of the box. That's why when you're choosing program managers for a position, to me, that's like the most critical criterion, is that, does this person have a strong reputation of trust within the organization? I need somebody who's going to be able to get stuff done. And it's really about working with your teams, right? You need to nurture relationships with people, especially the people within the organization that you want to build stuff for you, right? That that are in your own organization, because you're really going to be depending on them the most. And the other part then to enhance that is fostering collaboration between the various different product teams. I tend to work most closely with architects as a program manager. Architects really depend on us, because when you look at what architects do as opposed to engineering teams and product managers, they're also kind of looking at business objectives. When you think of why do companies have architects? Well, because we need to have the kind of infrastructure that's going to deliver business success, right? It's not just about individual team technologies and whether the individual teams can produce stuff, but does it all work together? So there's a tight relationship, to me, in my mind, between program managers and the architects in the company. So then, in terms of the practical stuff, that's kind of philosophical, right? That's kind of your mindset, your approach to things. Then on the practical side of things, how do you actually get stuff done? Well, I mean, I am a firm believer in clarity of goals and means. And I've seen a chart where it's kind of like an XY axis, and there's a line going through the middle at the 45-degree angle, which is the line that you're trying to stick with, right? In terms of clarity of goals and clarity of means, right? And if you don't have that, what you end up is a large space of meetings, right? If everybody that's involved in delivering stuff doesn't understand what the goals are, and not only that, but doesn't have a clear understanding of how to get there, you end up in a lot of meetings. You're constantly informing people, correcting people, educating people. It's really, it's critical that everybody is on the same page, right? So execution mindset. What do I think my first and foremost obligation is? This is my obligation. And when I get up out of bed in the morning, it's like, how can I help our engineering teams today, right? It's not about me. It's not about me being successful in achieving objectives. It's about, that'll happen if you can get your producers to get the stuff you need in an efficient manner, on time, without creating, angst and anxiety, right, and drama and all that kind of stuff. It's about working with the team, protecting them, setting them up for success. When things are successful, lavishing praise on them, not taking it yourself, because you're going to have to, it's never one and done, right? Then there's always step 2, there's version 2, there's version 3, and you need to go back to the well again and again and again. And every time you do, then you need to have people thinking, okay, I can't wait to work with Lester again, because wow, it was great last time. We all knew what we needed to do. Expectations were reasonable. Yes, we had to be accountable. We didn't get to make too many mistakes, get away with it, but it was effective and it was professional, right? You get that kind of environment if you work selflessly and do everything you can to enable your engineering staff and your product management staff and everybody else. Second thing is noise, right? I believe that it's the program manager's job to keep people focused. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this thing called agency theory. I'm sure you've come up against it though. This is when, especially if you have, different kind of power bases in a company, you don't have a very well aligned and, as Scott McNeely used to say, all the wood behind one arrow kind of an organization, kind of a company. You end up with these siloed power bases, right? Where since the executive organization is not that great at making things clear to everybody and getting everybody on the same page to achieve the business objectives, they end up going after their own, right? You get these siloed objectives. So in different parts of the organization, you'll get VPs, even senior directors, pursuing their own agendas, right? They're either working for their promotion or, they're working somewhat at odds with the greater good for their own good. Let's just put it that way. Now, if that is something that's going to get in the way of you delivering your program, you need to identify that and you need to neutralize it. And that's sometimes difficult to do, but this is where, you have to leverage the power of a program manager to make sure that you get done what you get done. There are lots of different ways to do it. I think you need to know your stuff, right? You need to have data at your disposal. You need to have executive support. Whoever the sponsor is for that particular initiative, you need to have their support, and you need lots and lots of communication, right? Because you need to make sure that everybody's prioritizing those things at the right level of prioritization over whatever other, siloed priorities they may have. I'm sure you guys have come up against this, but it's huge. It can really ruin your day if you don't have that. On the personal side, program managers, project managers, you really have to be thick-skinned. I mean, you have to have patience. You have to be persistent, and you have to persevere. Those are my 3 Ps, right? Typically in product program management, you have the 3 Ps. What is it, like progress, problems, and proposals, or whatever. For me, it's about patience, persistence, and perseverance. Right? You need to be all of those 3, and kind of relentless, which is the perseverance at the same time. It's a long haul. I mean, a lot of programs are multi-year things. The ones I work on, I've been working on, and John, I'm sure will verify, I've been working on certain programs that have been going for years, right? 4 or 5 year programs, right? And some of them are critical, but they just take a long time, like a total re-architecting of our technical stack, right? Getting off of legacy stuff, moving on to more modern stuff. That stuff goes on for years and years and years, because it's the typical, cliched, replacing an engine in an airplane while it's flying. So, there's all kinds of things that get in the way. You're constantly adapting. Plans are only, have the shelf life of a banana, right? 2 or 3 weeks or months into a long-term plan, you have to adapt, right? So those are very critical skills, soft skills to have. So on the practical, more on the hard skill side, what do you have in your toolbox to make you effective? Data. I mean, I'm a huge fan of data. It's the kind of the flavor of the month these days, but gathering the right data, removing the wheat from the chaff in the data, because you're always going to have messy, dirty data, and it's going to be confusing in the beginning, but filtering out the stuff that's useless and really focusing in on the stuff that's useful, and using it to support your arguments is critical. I'm a huge believer in custom processes. I'm not a big fan of out-of-the-box tools. I think that one of the big mistakes that organizations and individuals make is, at the start of a project, they'll say, we're going to use this tool and this tool and this tool, and everything has to fit into it. And we're guilty of that, at eBay, and I'm sure lots of large organizations are too. You pay a lot of money to vendors for specific tools, or you use open source stuff, and it's not a great fit. So you use it and you try to get the most out of it. But for me, at the individual program manager level, I typically build all my own templates. I design my own tracking sheets. I create my own report templates. I devise my own meeting schedules, different types of meetings, and whatever cadence, and I adapt them constantly along the way, right? It's a constant, you have your antenna up, you figure out what's needed, you see how things are going, you adjust, and you just keep going like that. I mean, and it's going to be a constantly dynamically changing environment in that way. And you'll use custom processes in the beginning that you'll end of life after a certain phase, and then you'll start new ones. And it's a journey, and you just use the most appropriate thing for the given task along the way. I talked about the hygiene stuff, filtering out the noise, setting timelines, tracking delivery, following up with things, closing loops. That's the nuts and bolts of being a project or a program manager. You have to be reliable, right? And you have to follow up on your word. You have to follow up with people on their word, right? You have to hold people accountable. You have to be accountable. It's critical. Everything falls apart if that doesn't happen. And then when things do fall apart, what do? I mean, do you lose sleep? Do you, start taking drugs? I don't know. No, you basically, you use your common sense and you appeal to people's common sense and say, this isn't working, we need to change, right? Nobody's going to kill you for that. Nobody's going to fire you for saying, hey, we're not going to meet this deliverable. But the better you are at getting out in front of it, then the easier it will be. So I would say, canary in the coal mine kind of stuff, constantly looking out, constantly asking those questions of people that really force them to be honest. And because people won't be forthcoming with information sometimes unless you just drag it out of them. So you need to be prepared to do that. You need to listen to what's going on, be aware of any kind of agency theory conflicts that are going on in other groups. You hear about this big project that just started, and then you hear the name of a person who's supposed to be working on your project is working on that project. I mean, those are the kinds of things you really have to be on the lookout for, and make sure that commitments are being met, and things aren't going to go sideways on you. So I mean, that's kind of a lot of philosophical stuff, a lot of toolbox stuff, and I just thought I'd finish up by just talking a little bit about what is it that I do actually day to day. So since I joined the selling experience engineering team, it was kind of an open slate, right, in terms of what my job was, what my role was. I think in HR, I'm a technical marketing manager or something, but it doesn't really describe what I do. Scott said, well, I kind of want you to be my chief of staff and help me run the organization. But I don't want you to just do chief of staff stuff. I want you to manage technical programs, right? I want you to take care of a lot of stuff as well. So we came up with chief of staff and technical programs. So I'm responsible for all of the, selling engineering is a 300 plus developer organization. We have a massive amount of computing software that was developed by a lot of it's legacy, a lot of it's new. But everything to do with listings and listing tools at eBay is in our organization, right? And a lot of other stuff too. All of the Seller Hub stuff, if you're an eBay seller and you know what Seller Hub is, we own all that, and all of the listing tools and all of the research tools and all of the listing management tools and all that stuff. So we have over 30 different teams. We have thousands of computing pools to manage. So there's a constant maintenance, hygiene kind of stuff going on with the hardware and the software. So I manage all of that. Everything to do with migrating onto new hardware systems, if we need to move code, if we need to plan migrations of software onto new stuff, if we're exiting out of one data center to another data center, if we're upgrading security patches, if we're moving to new versions of industry software, open source, all that stuff, accessibility, compliance, the new GDPR stuff coming out of Europe, compliance with that, all that stuff I'm ultimately responsible for as a program manager. So those are programs. We have a whole bunch of programs around that, and I run all of those, and I work closely with the tech ops organization and with our product teams and our product managers and with all of the other functional domains at eBay to get all that stuff done for selling. I also keep an eye on the run the business stuff, our production bugs, our any kind of site issues that might need some program management help to resolve. And any other kind of day-to-day asks that come in, and they come in thick and fast sometimes. Somebody wants something, and we need, we need to take care of it. And we have to put it like if it involves putting any kind of temporary tiger or SWAT team together, then typically somebody like me will come in and manage all of that. Staff management and support, and this has a lot to do with events, communicating what's going on, setting up all hands meetings, organizing parties, not lately, but when we get back to doing that, coming up with systems and process infrastructure for all of the teams, big organizations, and even ordering laptops and systems and setting up remote access environments during the pandemic and all that kind of stuff. Whatever it could be anything, and I typically get pulled into that kind of stuff, and it's fun. Those kind of projects are fun. They're different, and there's a learning curve, and it's kind of like they're typically less than a year in length and stuff, and it's fun to do. And I also own a little bit of product. So as John alluded to in the beginning, we have this thing called multi-user account access. which allows sellers to employ people and give them access to their eBay accounts on a limited basis to do, selling tasks for them. And I am actually the official product manager across many different organizations for that, because it cuts across not just selling, but identity and buying and, certainly customer support and, internationalization and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of our business units and things like that. So that's kind of something that I own, that I kind of asked my boss, I said, it'd be really nice for me to own something that's my own. And he says, yep, here, take this. And I've owned that for the last 3 years, and it's chugged along nicely. Okay, I'm going to finish up with this kind of question that I was asking myself really only when I started thinking about this. I knew the answer to this to myself a long time ago, but I've had people come to me in the past and ask, I'm interested in program management, and I would ask them why are you interested in program management? Well, it looks like it's a pretty cool set of skills to learn, and I'd like to know what it's like and take that forward in my career. And then I think about, well, is that because you think it's a stepping stone, or is it because you want to be a program manager, or something related to program management? And so I was thinking, I just introspecting. Well, how has it been for me? How did I end up at where I am today? And certainly for me, it's been a destination. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I feel like I was destined for this role from way back. And I think a lot of it is to do with my personality type. For those of you who are into this kind of thing, like the Myers-Briggs and Insights Discovery, I'm a green/yellow in Insights Discovery, as opposed to red or blue. And I'll let you look up what that means. It means I'm more on the people relationship side and the caring side and the empathy side, than on the kind of type A personality, the go-getter salesperson or CEO, or somebody who's a kind of a real goal setter and going after goals and always stepping up. I'm much more of a infrastructure, interpersonal relationship builder, that kind of person. So I think that's well suited to being a program manager. I'm more interested in enabling things than getting results and accolades, right? I get a lot of satisfaction out of building something that everybody can take advantage of, and it working well. And this goes way back. I think even back to when I was in Ireland, I always gravitated towards organizational things, right? Planning things in advance, thinking about how I wanted something to be, and visualizing it, and working slowly, methodically, but steadily towards accomplishing that, right? And that's always been in my makeup. It's always something I've been good at. Building supportive infrastructures. Whenever I start doing something new, the first thing I think about, okay, what kind of infrastructure do I need in order for this to not fall down after a while, right? So I'm very inclined towards that. And I'm very adaptable. I find it, I'm a bit of a chameleon, right? I find it fairly natural to take on a completely new thing and adapt to it quickly, and deal with the learning curve and get up to speed. And I can become competent at just about everything. I'm not an expert in very many things, but I have a lot of confidence in my ability to be competent at something that I know nothing about, in a reasonably fast amount of time. And that's something that's really good as a program manager, because you're going to have to learn to pick up things and work with people who are experts in fields that you have know nothing about, and you need to get up to speed. And I think it's very useful just from the practical point of view. And I've always had a strong preference over the how to do things rather than what they are. I've even said to people in the past, I really don't care about products. I like them to be successful. I like them to be built well. But in terms of what they actually do, am I really passionate about how one product is different than the other or better than the other? Not really. I've never really been that, that tuned into it. To me, it's always been about, oh, how can we build that stronger? How can we build it faster? How can we get those people to work together better? And that's just kind of what's the word for it? That's just my makeup, right? It's just who I am. So this has always been a very good fit for me. And that's it, actually. That's about all I had to share. So I would be more than happy, John, for you to take it from here. And if there are
Yeah.
questions or anything.
Fantastic, Lester. Thank you. I've learned. Boy, I thought I knew you. There's some gems in here that really are impressive. How much we are alike. Actually, I've been looking up links while you've been talking, like agency theory. My Myers-Briggs type is ESFJ, so we're really close on the E and the J. I've never done the color stuff. But a lot of good stuff to take away, and we'll have to do a virtual lunch until we get back in the office. All right, so we'll open the floor to questions. So there's a Q&A button, and just click that and ask a question. But while you think about your question, Lester is going to ask you one thing I struggle with, and I feel great asking you about this because I know you a lot better and we're so much alike. Single point of contact is great. Everybody wants that, especially executives, versus single point of failure. And how do you find the balance? How do you take a day off? How do you have a sabbatical when you become this grease between the gears and the glue between silos and this essential relationship builder? And then you leave for a day or a week. How have you handled that in your career, being successful in building relationships and then having to take a day off?
I mean, that's a great question. I try not to take those leaves of absence during critical points. Right? I'm kind of sneaky, you know. I'll plan. I mean, I'm already planning 18 months in advance, right? Because I was supposed to take a sabbatical during the pandemic last year, right? A 4-week sabbatical, and I didn't get to take it. And so I've already planned to take it next June, right? So I know that by next June, I need to make sure that there's nothing really critical that depends on me being in the office that's going to happen during the month of June, like the last 2 weeks of May through the first 2 weeks of July, like that 2-month time period. And then in between that, I typically take smaller vacations, right? So it'll be a few days, a long weekend here, a long weekend there. And I cheat, you know. I'll let people contact me if there's something important. But really, it's preparing for it. It's typically letting people know, you know, if this, you know, I think because of the way that I set things up, I try to set things up so that they will run regardless of me being there, right? So that there's a cadence to things. There's, as I said, like I like to build infrastructure environments, right? So that, you know, if I don't show up for a meeting, it's not the end of the world. A meeting can be canceled. There's very, very few situations that really do depend on me that critically. I'm not that important. I like to think that I've set things up to work so that if I'm not there, they'll just keep going, right? That things will just keep chugging along. Yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question.
But it's something to consider, right? Yeah, I think in the last 2 sentences, you nailed it for me. Are you as a PM setting up systems that extend your value if and when you need to take time off? Are they sustaining in a way that doesn't, where you're not the critical point of failure? So whenever you can,
a lot of it stems from how you treat other people too on the team, right? So I like to think that I'm 90% flexible and 10% demanding, and people know that if I say I need something, you know, people who've known and worked with me for a while, and I said, no, I need this by Friday, and they will get it from me by Friday. They'll drop other things that they're doing and get it to me by Friday. Yeah. Because 90% of the time they've said, hey, I'm really busy this week. I've given them the benefit of the doubt. It's like I say, well, you know, can I help do it? Is there somebody else who I can work with in your absence? And then we can just like ping you real quickly. It's back to what I said earlier. It's building trust, right? If you build trust with the people, and if you treat them well, if you protect them, you defend them, they'll do the same for you, right? So when you're gone, somebody will pick it up. Like I could name names that you and I know really well, and people that I work with in selling and other organizations. And if they know I'm out, they'll actually pick it up for me when I'm gone, you know. And it's like
pick it up, yeah.
You know, like people like,
cool.
You know, like
same here.
Scott himself, my manager will pick stuff up for me, right? Because, you know,
that's good.
I don't know. It's just it's just the way you work with people. I think
Okay.
you,
Well,
you
that's fair. That's a
create an
fair answer.
environment that isn't that fragile, that it's going to fall apart if you're not there
Yeah.
for 2 days.
Fall apart. Okay, cool. Question from
Somebody
the
asked
group.
a question.
Do
Somebody
you
asked a
practice
question.
Agile? And yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, good. Question is, do you practice Agile, and where do you see these titles fitting into your work? Titles like product owner, scrum master, those kind of things.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, that's a big one. So, I was one of the first people to try to bring Scrum into, American, shrink wrap software environments back at Sun Microsystems. I got my Scrum Master training from Gabriel Benefield, who was in, one of the ones that's one of the beginners of it. I've met a lot of the people who began, like Fowler and all those guys, but way back then. Like this is like almost 20 years ago when Scrum was starting to be really popular, and I met some of these people at meetups and things like that. And I was high on Scrum. I'm telling you, I was really passionate about it, and I love it in concept, but it and I love the way some organizations have been really good at implementing it, and we've had parts of eBay that have been really good at implement. Typically ones that are way out on their own, like an office that's not near corporate. What I found though is for Agile is that people just take bits and pieces of it to suit themselves, and ignore the real really hard parts, right? The real nuts and bolts of it. Like they talk about doing sprints and 2-week iterations, but they don't do any of the ceremonies. They don't do proper stand-ups. They don't do burn down charts. They don't measure their velocity. They don't do proper retrospectives. They don't manage their backlog. They don't do, cost, pricing, whatever the scopings and things like that. And they don't have this constant interaction between, the product owners and the team members. They don't integrate testing into the team. It's still centralized as a QA organization and things like that. That's kind of, I see a lot of the titles, I see a lot of the names thrown around. The answer is no, I don't practice Agile. I wish I did. But it's one of those things, like, it's almost like, to me, practicing Agile today in corporate America is almost like trying to practice global warming mitigation. It's like, yes, you believe in it. Yes, it's really important. Yes, it works, but you're fighting so many forces. It's almost to me, what I've seen, and yeah, I'm a bit jaded on it because I was a big believer in it and I got disappointed. Is that it's against human nature. It's against the greed in human beings, right? Agile requires the we, much like pandemic fighting requires the we, and there are just way too many people who don't care about the we, and that's sad, but it's true. And there are way too many people that come and go in organizations that don't care about whether, about something like an Agile framework working, right? And going through the pain, the teething pains to get the benefit, because there's a lot of upfront, there's an enormous amount of upfront investment required to make Agile work properly. And executives just want the value. They just want the payoff, but they don't have the backbone to pay for the upfront cost and go through the pain, because they say, wait a minute, I might never get the benefit of this. My successor's going to get it. Why would I do that? So I'm a little bit cynical on it, a little bit jaded on it. It's unfortunate, but no, I hope that answers the question.
Is there an example you could give about a dynamic of a relationship you have with a product owner or a scrum master or one of these Agile titles, these Agile roles that you could impart that's especially useful in that relationship? Be going to a sprint review and making a comment about something that they need to know, or a product owner comes to you and says, are other teams across eBay having this problem, Lester, as a PM, because you're the breadth versus the depth? Yeah. Is there any kind of relationship that you could talk about with those particular kind of Agile roles?
Could you just go back to the beginning of that again?
Yeah,
So I
if you,
can
if,
pull
think
a
of a
pretty
product
concise
owner,
question out of
or,
it.
yeah, if you have a product owner or a scrum master you work with, what might be an example of something you help them with as a program manager?
Um, the toolbox stuff. I think just the practical stuff, right? Gathering data, filtering data, creating custom ways of managing data and communicating it to teams. Actually, where the rubber meets the road, I think, is the most useful advice a program manager can give to somebody who's starting out or somebody who's in a slightly different role and wants to kind of tap into some of your skills because maybe they don't have somebody on their side who's dedicated to that role and they need to pick up some of it themselves. So I would say it's a lot of it is just the practical stuff, right? How do you make meetings effective? How do you get execution done, right? And to me, I mean, program management is almost it's what happens after everybody gets aligned, right? So everything's kind of top down when it comes to planning, right? Typically, right? Everything is kind of top down, right? We go through these planning cycles and executives talk to consultant companies, right? They have, they'll have one of these Bain or whoever they are, right? Come into the organization and tell them what's wrong with their organization, and they'll give them a list of things that they should do, right? So they come out of that and they go, okay, we're going to work on these initiatives. Our customers are telling us we have this problem that we need to fix. They go to all of their direct reports, and their direct reports go down to the director levels, and they kind of come up with this planning tool, and they put everything in there, and they list and they sort and they prioritize and they rank order, and they get everything, and they get this nice big list of things, right? That everybody has to kind of align on, and you figure out who your dependencies are and who's dependent on you and all that stuff. And when you come out of that, at that point, it's like, okay, now we need all the program managers to go execute this stuff. Because if you don't have program managers going in and saying, okay, this needs to be done, and identifying the dependencies and have them work across the organization and have them actually get people to work together, to collaborate, to build the trust between each other, to implement certain practices, right? To share data, to get clarity of means and clarity of outcome, right? Execution will just not happen, right? And that's when roadmaps slip, when things get delivered that were not as they intended. Customers go, yeah, thanks for delivering that. It wasn't what I asked for, And I think that's the value of program management, right? Is that they're the ones who really need to understand what it is that the business objective is, and to make sure that that business objective is what gets delivered. So it's teaching people the practical ways to do that is all I can do for people, right? Is to say, well, you're going to need to do this and this, and you're going to need to, the stuff I said in the presentation, all that. That's what I do. Yeah.
Well, one thing I know that you do that you didn't say is, as a program manager, you are aware of certain things like service pool upgrades that need to be done by a certain time that that POs are supposed to know about and factor into their release planning, or things that may take them like surprise, like a security initiative. Yeah. And you tend to be aware of those and go to a product owner and say, hey, by the way, I didn't see this on your roadmap. You may want to be aware of this, or this is emerging stuff that I just came from a meeting. Again, being the breadth, you acquaint them with something that they may need to know that affects their ability to deliver business value because of a requirement that emerged that is technical.
Yeah, well, this is the agency theory. This is the agency theory I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
And they're vertically focused. You see, that's why I start off with it. These guys are vertically focused. You're going to have to go to them and show them the horizontal, right? You have to make them aware of the horizontal. And they say, no, I have these features to deliver. I've committed to this roadmap, but you're both fighting over the same resources. As a program manager, I'm fighting for the same resources as he's fighting for. And at that point, you need to resolve that. That's what a program, they're not going to resolve it. They're going to say, no, that's my product roadmap. That's what I'm delivering. You're going to have to be the one that comes in and says, well, we have business objectives that actually are prioritized. And, at the very end, I was saying, what do you have at your disposal? Escalation. Sometimes escalation is all that works, and that's bringing in the higher up execs who own the initiatives, because they're on the hook for that,
good point.
and have them talk to
That's the other thing
to the product owners and say, you know what, we need to make a trade.
Product owners. That's I think a brilliant thing that also being Brett, you work with 5 product owners. They're in their silos, which is good because they have to focus and specialize. They got stuff to do. But you're between the silos, so you might see a pattern that 3 product owners have, but they can't see it because they don't talk to other product owners. So you say, I see this one problem this product owner is going to have with his team or her team. You're going to have this problem too, other product owners. So be aware of this, like if it's data governance or some kind of interesting security issue. You can be like a traveling minstrel and sing the song of a risk because you're at that level where you're above, like not better, but above more perspective. That's what I like about my role.
Yeah, I mean, there is one thing I'll say about being a senior program manager with tenure, right? Which is what you and I both are, is you have more power than you think you do. I mean, you might realize you have the power. I mean, I know with certain groups I have power, but then there are people I don't know and I don't have power with them. And I need to figure out how to get my power into their world, right? Yeah. By either introducing them to somebody who's a mutual friend who's worked with me in the past and have them say in their ear, hey, if Lester asks you for something, do your best to do it, right? He's not going to mess you around. He's someone that's easy to work with and blah, 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 blah. I mean, a reputation is huge as a program manager, right? Being accountable and holding people accountable. It's critical.
Yeah, reputation is your currency. It's literally value.
Yeah, it's your power.
Awesome. All right. It's your power. Thank you, Lester. This has been fantastic. A great set of slides with some thoughtful and provocative ideas. And thank you for being our speaker for this August session. To everybody, I am looking for speakers for our next session, which will be October, the second Wednesday in October. And that's pretty much it. I don't see any other questions in the queue. And Joe, do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to say before we officially close?
No, just thank you. Thank you for all the insight. I appreciate it. Good thoughts all around.
You're welcome. It was fun.
Awesome.
Thanks for asking me to do
it. Pleasure.
Right. Thank you. All right. Okay. So Shelley, that's it. Any final thoughts and we'll wrap it up. Okay. Great.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you in 2 months.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. And thank you for participating in this and helping build a new community around this thought base. It's great. Cheers.